Here is a fact people often avoid thinking about. A stranger's voice ranks as one of the strongest triggers for fear during sleep. Your brain stays alert for voices even while you rest, which is why hearing one in a dark room feels worse than hearing a noise or a footstep. Welcome to Cracked Doll. These are true horror stories shared on Reddit, so get comfy and listen up. Before we start, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you're always notified when we upload a new video. The belly crawling man. This is a true story that happened to my husband and I. It begins with a dream, but ended up in our actual, very real, everyday lives. One night I had a dream so bad I woke myself up whimpering. In the dream, a man was crawling along the ground, on his belly, drooling, snarling, chewing, and clawing his way along the earth. Picture King's lawnmower man, just terrifying. He crawled along the side of our home until he got to my window. Then he pulled himself up and looked in with wild, yellow eyes. He was chewing, biting, on a pair of red thong underwear. He stretched them out, gritting one end in his teeth and pulling the other end tight with his hand, like it was bubble gum. He was growling and making noises like Danny DeVito's penguin character in the 1990s Batman movie. It was such a visual and auditory dream. It was terrifying. My whimpering woke my husband up. I told my husband about the dream, and he comforted me back to sleep, and eventually I forgot about the dream. But not too long after, in real life, my husband and I were outside doing yard work. In the grass alongside our house, right below our window, there was a stretched out pair of red bone underwear. My husband and I just froze and looked at each other. I was like, "What the fuck, babe?" My husband was just like, I don't know, that's really weird. It still freaks me out. A lady has been following me since I was a child. When I was around 10 to 11 years old, I lived in a small 2-story house out a rural country road with my mother. My stepdad was out of state working. He traveled a lot. One of my mother's and I favorite activities was movie night. We would go all out. Snack trays, drinks, candy, the works. We would sit for hours at night vegging out and watching movies. We were both camped out on the floor, watching it by Stephen King. She had paused the movie and was planning on making a run to the fridge. Before she could stand up, we heard a crashing sound come from the stairs. At the top of the stairs, my mom had a desk where she left her sewing machine, a large tackle box that she used to keep her sewing needles, thread, etc. in, and a large box of pictures that she always planned on hanging up but never did. We both turned out attention into the next room to see her sewing machine laying on the floor at the bottom of the steps. It had fallen with such force it had broken to several pieces. As we stood looking, her tackle box came flying down the stairs. This thing came down the stairs with a force strong enough to avoid touching 2/8 of the steps on its way down, before smashing open on the final 2 steps. Out of curiosity more than fear, I started to approach the staircase. Just as I started walking, the box of pictures my mom had sitting on the desk came flying down the stairs with the same force as the previous 2 objects. Glass shattered and frames broke as the box tumbled down the last 2 or 3 steps. My mother at this point must have grabbed the bat she kept behind the front door, because when she grabbed me from behind, she was holding it in her hand. She pulled me back and told me to stay put as she walked over to the stairs, banging the bat against the banister. She yells, "The police are on their way. Whoever you are, get the fuck out of my house." Silence. She hits the bat against the banister again. "I don't know how you got in here, but I want you to get the fuck out of my house while you still have the chance." Silence. She then hands me the cordless phone and tells me if something goes wrong, she wants me to run outside and call 911. I agreed. She makes it known she is coming up and has a weapon. About a minute after watching her ascend the stairs, I hear a blood-curdling scream come from my mother. Immediately, my 10-year-old self turned tail, ran outside, and dialed 911. I informed the operator what had happened, and she, for some reason, insisted that my scrawny 10-year-old self go back inside and see if I can check on my mother. Because after all, if there was an intruder out to harm us, sending me back inside was brilliant. Before I could start making my way back inside, my mother walked out the front door, approached me, took the phone, and informed the operator that everything was fine. She had went upstairs to investigate and got startled. An officer was still sent out and performed a walkthrough of the house, just to make sure no one was present. There was no one there. A few years later, my mom decided to elaborate upon her being startled that night. She said as she came to the top of the stairs, she thought she saw a woman standing at the end of the hallway. She was embarrassed to admit this at the time to the officer or me. She wanted to keep her tough mother persona, or maybe she just didn't want to scare me any more than I already was. That was the first mention or appearance of a woman. Several months later, I had a friend over to stay the night. We turned in for the night, having outlasted my mom, herself already being in bed. I slept in my bed, and he slept in a sleeping bag on the floor next to the bed. I'm not sure how long we were asleep, if it was even long at all. I was awoken by the sound of someone slowly coming up the stairs. The sound they made as they came up the stairs is what woke me. The sound of dry feet scratching against our wooden steps. Even today, the thought of that sound gives me the chills. At first, I just laid there listening as they came up the steps and started their slow, dry scratching way down the hall. Whoever they were didn't stop to turn on the light as they reached the top, just kept walking in the dark. I could hear the sound of things being moved and rattled as it was brushed up against as they walked. I remember this sense of uncontrollable dread just sweep over me, and being a child at that time, I did the only thing I could think of. I mustered up a low, soft cry from a mom, probably hoping for an answer, but got nothing. The steps stopped, midway down the hallway towards my room. It went silent again. Then, almost as quickly as they stopped, they started up again. This time they were right outside my wide open door. Another childish whimper from my mom received a response, but the woman's voice I heard respond was not my mother. I threw myself off the bed in an absolute panic, landing on top of my friend saying, "Shush, there's someone in my room." We both laid there in silence, scared out of our minds. Silence. Then again, the footsteps began again, inside of my room. We both shot up, hitting the light next to my bed. Nothing. The room was empty. We both ran downstairs and woke up my mother, asking if she was just upstairs in my room, even though deep down I already knew the answer. There was some woman other than my mother, inside our house, inside my room, who tried talking to me. Skipping ahead a few years, nothing involving a woman has happened again. I think I had kind of forgotten about it at this point. We were living in a new state and a new town. I was having a sort of sleepover with a group of friends. One of my friend's mothers worked the night shift, so on some weekends, he would invite us all over to crash and play video games without his mom knowing. We were all gathered in the living room taking turns on Virtual Fighter, and as boys would typically do, began fighting and roughhousing with each other over who would get the next turn. My friend's little brother came into the room about a year younger than us and thought it'd be fun to jump in and roughhouse with us. He jumped onto my back, and by reflex I tried to spin around and ended up landing my elbow into the side of his head, busting his lip open. Obviously by accident, so there were no tempers or anything. His little brother ran off crying and locked himself into his room. Everyone laughing and trying to guilt trip me, we just kept on going with our night, eventually falling asleep. Being one of the last to wake up the next morning, everyone else was back playing Virtual Fighter. I sat up and called next turn. As I did, everyone stopped and looked at me oddly. They started explaining that some older lady with dark brown hair had showed up, knocked on the door and was asking for me. Where I was? then proceeded to say, "I'm sorry for what happened to your brother. Cody didn't mean to hurt him." They said she then just turned and walked off. 2 out of the 5 people there were my close friends, and they knew who my mother was. They had met her on several occasions. They all claimed to have never seen her before. They had no idea who she was. I kept asking, "Are you guys sure it wasn't so-and-so?" And nope. This lady was a complete stranger. About a year later, I was spending some time with my girlfriend. We were at our normal hangout, right down the road from her house. We were talking about random stuff, when, out of nowhere, she said, "Hey, I met your grandma, or maybe it was your aunt." "What do you mean?" I asked. "My grandma passed away before I was born, and my mom doesn't have any siblings." She went on to tell me that a couple days ago, a lady showed up at her door, saying she was looking for me. She said she asked, "Where is Cody?" And before she could finish answering, saying maybe I was at another friend's house, the lady turned and walked away. Didn't introduce herself, just asked for me, and then walked off. Again, as the previous time this woman has showed up, my girlfriend had met my mother and was 110% sure it was not her. All she knew was she was an older lady with dark brown hair. That's twice an older woman with dark brown hair has almost mysteriously appeared looking for me, only to just walk off and disappear just as strangely. Nobody saw her physically disappear, simply just turn and walk off. No vehicle, just walk off. Now this instance is up for interpretation, but in my opinion fits the bill of being followed by someone or something. One night, my friend Robert and I were walking over to another friend's house to see if he wanted to hang out. We lived on the same road, just opposite ends. Our end being the more populated, his being the more secluded. I walked along the shoulder as Robert walked semi in the middle of the left lane. To our left, about 15 to 20 feet, was the tree line. As we were walking, Robert suddenly stopped and stared fixated at the tree line. He asked, "Did you see that?" He said, apparently, he had thought he saw a shadowy outline of a person following us, just past the tree line. Actually litten, we saw nothing. Darkness and trees. On the walk back, this time with a note of panic and fear in his voice, claimed he saw it again. A shadowy outline of a person following us, just past the tree line. Now, just one instance of this wouldn't be so bad. You could chalk it up to imagination. However, this proceeded to happen on several occasions, but only to him, and only when he was around me. That's twice. An older woman with dark brown hair has almost mysteriously appeared looking for me, only to just walk off and disappear just as strangely. Nobody saw her physically disappear, simply just turn and walk off. No vehicle, just walk off. Now this instance is up for interpretation, but in my opinion fits the bill of being followed by someone or something. One night, my friend Robert and I were walking over to another friend's house to see if he wanted to hang out. We lived on the same road, just opposite ends. Our end being the more populated, his being the more secluded. I walked along the shoulder as Robert walked semi in the middle of the left lane. To our left, about 15 to 20 feet, was the tree line. As we were walking, Robert suddenly stopped and stared fixated at the tree line. He asked, "Did you see that?" He said apparently he had thought he saw a shadowy outline of a person following us just past the tree line. Actually looking, we saw nothing. Darkness and trees. On the walk back, this time with a note of panic and fear in his voice, claimed he saw it again. A shadowy outline of a person following us just past the tree line. Now, just one instance of this wouldn't be so bad. You could chalk it up to imagination. However, this proceeded to happen on several occasions, but only to him, and only when he was around me. Always the same thing. He claimed to see a shadowy outline of a person following us just out of his vision. It actually got to the point it unnerved him so much he would no longer hang out around me for about 6 months. Maybe something was following us, following me. Maybe he could see it, I don't know. This is one of the events that's basically left open for interpretation. Forward another few months, I had just got home from a late screening of The Messengers. I think that's the name. It was that horror movie that stared the chick from Twilight. Oh well, I had both of my windows open and was hanging a poster on my wall when from outside in the pitch black, I heard a female's voice call my name. It wasn't just a quick blurt that could be passed off as imagination. It was kind of drawn out a bit. It trailed a bit. I peered out, thinking my girlfriend had snuck over for a visit. I saw nothing. I went back to what I was doing, and again, this time, it sounded like whoever it was practically inside my damn room, or maybe just below the window. There was no one. I walked outside, around the house, and found nothing. It shook me up enough. I called my girlfriend, who lived only a couple blocks away, and asked if it was her. Nope, her mom wasn't letting her out that night. It was a family night. She was trapped at home. I know what I heard. I heard it twice. Clear as day, a woman's voice, calling my name from right outside my window. What makes me consider this as important is simply the fact it was a woman's voice I heard. It makes sense to include it, despite how small it may seem. Skipping forward again, 5 years exactly. My mother is in town and is approached by a lady who she said had dark brown hair and looked to be the suitable age to be one of my friend's mothers. The lady asked, "Where is Cody?" And as just like before she can even finish responding, the lady turns and just walks away. She brought this up to me later that day, assuming it was one of my friend's mothers curious as to why I wasn't with her. I remember my mom saying, she was awfully rude, like my response was upsetting to her. Present time, a few weeks ago to be exact, I'm 28 years old and I have 2 kids of my own, ages 4 and 5. Our favorite thing to do together is movie night, just as it was with my mom as a kid. The wife worked late that evening, so I decided it would be fun to have a movie night. We got set up in their room, and I put on the Lego movie. Halfway through, they got bored and moved to the floor to play with their blocks and started bickering like crazy people over who would get which color. I would occasionally make a joke to them about it, just to listen to them bicker. I had kind of noticed them get quiet and focus their attention towards the kitchen area, but I preoccupied with the movie, I didn't pay too much attention. I shot another joke their way about Sissy can no longer have red blocks because red blocks are for boys. I was expecting a snarky, childish response from her, but I wasn't even on their radar anymore. They were both honed in to that kitchen area. They had a look of confusion on their face. When I started to take focus away from the movie to figure out what's going on down there in Kidland, that's when I heard it myself. A dry, almost hacking woman's cough come from the kitchen area. Instantly, I was upright and alert, sitting in silence with my children and listening. We heard it again, that dry, almost hacking cough, unmistakably from a woman. This time the kids looked at me and could see the look on my face and probably sense my feelings. They both darted up, started to mumble and sob in a sort of a panic, and ran over to me, my daughter trying to hide in my lap while starting to sob, and my little boy trying to scramble under the bed. That's when I heard a sound that was all too familiar to me, the sound of dry, scratching steps dragging over our hardwood floors, towards my children's bedroom. Standing up, I told my kids to get under their beds and be quiet. My daughter was crying silently. "Someone's in the house. Dad, someone's here. And it's not Mom." Hearing the dry coughing and scratching steps again as I made my way over to the doorway. It seemed like seconds before I would have peered through the doorway and see whoever it was inside of our house. It stopped. Silence. Just the sound of my kids sobbing in a panic and asking, "Dad, who is it? Dad, where are they?" I looked into the kitchen and of course saw nothing. I brought the kids around the house with me as I searched every room, closet, under the beds, locked all the doors, windows, everything I could think of to calm them down. They stayed up until the wife got home, and we all slept in the living room that night. The next day, my daughter asked me out of nowhere, "Daddy, is that lady coming back tonight?" I never said anything to my daughter denoting a male or female on what we heard that night. My wife asked her sissy, "What makes you say it was a lady?" She looked at both of us and said, "I saw a lady standing behind the glass in our door." My wife asked her, "What did this lady look like?" My daughter said, "She had hair like Dad. It was dark brown." I was supposed to be home alone. 7 years ago, my parents went away on a weekend trip. They were heading down to Louisiana for a wedding my cousins were having, and I didn't want to go with them because I had an important test at school, and I didn't want to make it up. I was a senior in high school at the time and was 18, so my parents didn't see anything wrong with me staying home alone for the weekend. I still get chills thinking about what happened. The first night they were gone was normal. I came home from working my evening shift job and started playing games with my boys. We played till about 1 or 2 that morning, and I went to bed excited about being able to sleep in that Saturday morning. Whenever I woke up Saturday morning, the day was pretty normal. I made a cup of coffee, drove to the store to get some energy drinks, the usual. That night, I went to bed normally, around 1 or 2, and had nothing strange happen. Sunday morning, I woke up and checked my phone to see if I had any notifications from any of my friends. I didn't, so I went to my photo gallery to look at some memes I had saved to send my boys when I saw it. Pictures of me from hours before, sleeping. Some pictures were stamped 2:35 a.m., while another was 3:07, and so on. All pictures took of me while I was sleeping, at positions that would have been impossible for me to accidentally take them myself. My parents didn't believe me, and all of my friends swore they didn't sneak in. I still don't know who took those photos of me. I don't know if I ever will. An old memory that I think may have been a skinwalker. I live on a dirt road in a small town in Utah, next to a gun range. I've lived here since I was 7. I'm 20 now. Of course, being that close to a mountain and people with guns is asking for an odd crowd. I have many stories of strange encounters, not all paranormal per se, but just strange people. This memory came back to me when I had a friend over the other day. My house is a farmhouse with a wraparound porch and windows surrounding the home. Mind you, have no curtains, which of course always scared me as a kid, the look into the dark abyss. I do still get scared sometimes, but I'm used to it. My friend, let's call her Mandy. It was her first time at my house, and she pointed out that this is the perfect place for SWs. I kind of laughed it off because I don't know what I really believe. But she's not the first person to say that. She followed it up with a question. "Well, have you ever seen one?" I thought for a second, and the story reappeared in my mind. I was around 12. I used to drive our four-wheeler up and around the mountain that had the shooting range attached to it. That's where the story starts. I did just that. I grabbed the keys to the four-wheeler and headed out for a drive. It was late summer, clear skies, evening time, perfect time to be outside. I start to drive down the bumpy road singing my little tunes, and while I'm driving down the hill to head over to the mountain, but I see a man going for a walk on our street. My gut dropped right as I saw this man. It sank. But I have terrible anxiety, so I'm often on high alert. I heard my mom's voice telling me that it's just my anxiety, nothing's wrong. So I continued down the hill. We got a bit closer until every alarm bell in my body went off. This man, extremely tall, I would say 6'5", to the point where the top of him bent over, like gravity was pushing him down. He was eerily skinny, to the bone. His head was down looking at the road. He scared me. But I knew not to panic, or to make it seem like I was scared. I didn't want to offend him or profile him just based off his looks. I am still extremely close to my house, so I knew I could just turn around and go straight home. Once my four-wheeler was horizontal to the man, I see his head tilt up a little higher. He started to run towards me, and not just a jog, a sprint. I have never till this day seen something run that quickly. I press the gas and speed up the hill, drifting as the wheels try to gain traction. I heard him right behind me, quick footsteps pacing right behind the four-wheeler. My body was tense, and my body was in fight or flight. When I parked, I was confused how he wasn't right behind me, but I didn't spend too long on that thought. I just booked it inside, tears still running down my face. He was so fast. I lock all 4 doors on our main level, 1 door on each side of our home. My little sisters were home, and I hid us all under a table. I swear I heard footsteps walking on our porch, but I didn't see anything. I called my mom. She rushed home, but nothing. The footsteps stopped. There was no one, no marks, no trace, literally nothing. I just told myself it was my wild imagination and forgot about it over the years. But who knows? I had an encounter with an Ouija board this year, and it changed my perspective on a lot of things. If you have had any similar experiences, drop them down below. And don't forget to like and share this video if you enjoyed it. See you soon.